What's up, gamer? My name's Luco, and today I'm going to show you how to build a Flicker Strike Acolyte of Chayula. Quick guides are kind of my thing, so we'll do it in 5 minutes or less. For the full details of the build, including all the support gems, uniques, gear recommendations, and all that, check the description or the pinned comment for a link to the max roll planner as well as the path of building. First things first, the pros of this build are that it has a very high burst potential, it clears very fast, and it doesn't take a ton of investment to get off the ground. The cons are that the damage can be kind of unreliable because it uses several RNG mechanics. You can't really control your positioning because of how Flicker Strike works, and the method we use for power charge generation can be a little difficult to pull off in tense situations like breaches and boss fights. That said, let's talk about the why and the how of generating power charges with this build. Flicker Strike is a skill that teleports you to an enemy one time and hits the target as you land. When you use it, Flicker Strike will also consume all of your character's power charges to teleport and attack 2 additional times per power charge. By default, you can only have up to 3 power charges at a time, but with nodes relatively close to the monk's starting point on the skill tree, you can pretty easily get up to a maximum of 7 power charges for a total of 15 attacks per attack with Flicker Strike. If that's not enough, you can also get 1 extra maximum power charge from a corruption enchantment on your helmet, as well as 1 more extra max power charge from the Power Treads unique boots. I wasn't a huge fan of the Power Treads when I tried them, but feel free to check them out yourself if you're interested in that. With the potential for all of those extra attacks, you basically never want to use Flicker Strike if you don't have any power charges. One of the most annoying things about the ability is that the devs snuck a cheeky little line in the description that says your character cannot gain power charges while using this skill. So, we have to use different skills to generate them. Those skills are Siphoning Strike and Profane Ritual. Using Siphoning Strike against a shocked enemy consumes that shock and gives you a power charge in return, while Profane Ritual consumes a corpse to give you a power charge after a short delay. So, you need either a shocked enemy or a dead enemy to generate power charges. To satisfy either and or both of those conditions, we use another ability called Gathering Storm. To use it, you hold down the Gathering Storm button until your character flashes, then release it at that moment to charge forward. It can be difficult to get the timing right, but if you do it right, the ability will deal a bunch of damage and leave shocked ground behind in your wake. If everything you hit dies, you use Profane Ritual on the corpses. Adding the Unleash support gem to Profane Ritual will cause your character to cast it up to 3 times with 1 button press for a total of 3 power charges. If things survive, they'll be shocked from standing on the shocked ground, so you can hit them with Siphoning Strike to get power charges that way. Hitting the perfect timing window on Gathering Storm can be tough when you're getting swarmed, but it's really not too bad when you get used to it. So that's the method we use for power charges, but there's one more trick to generating them that you should know about, and this applies to any kind of charge, not just power charges. That trick is the Serpent Egg unique amulet, which says, among other things, gain an additional charge when you gain a charge. So instead of 7 or 8 or 9 Profane Rituals and Siphoning Strikes to fill up your charge counter, you only need half as many. The build works without it, but it is a huge quality of life upgrade when you do equip it. The only other active ability we use in this build is Charged Staff. It's a buff that consumes power charges to give a massive amount of added lightning damage to your attacks, as well as add an extra shockwave which triggers every time you attack with Flicker Strike. You basically always want this active. That combined with the only other unique we use in this build, the Hand of Wisdom in Action unique gloves, also known as HOA, turns into a whole lot of extra damage for the build for very little effort. Lastly, let's talk about the defenses. This build does well with a mix of energy shield and evasion, with a heavier emphasis on evasion. We take the Spectral Ward and Subterfuge Mask nodes, so we get a ton of energy shield for wearing a body armor with evasion rating, and we get a ton of evasion rating for wearing a helmet with energy shield. For boots, I recommend pure evasion rating, and the reason we need all that evasion rating is because of what I mentioned earlier in the pros and cons of the build. You can't really control where your character goes when you're using Flicker Strike, so we have a really hard time avoiding explosions and slams and things of that nature. Normally, evasion rating doesn't work against those attacks, so they're really annoying to deal with early on, but in the endgame we rely on the Acrobatics Keystone. It takes away a huge chunk of your evasion rating, but also makes the remaining evasion apply to those things that aren't usually evadable. That means you can stand in all those pesky on-death explosions, and if you're lucky, you won't die. You shouldn't take the Acrobatics Keystone until you have up to about 15,000 evasion rating or more because of how harsh the penalty is, but once you do get there, the game becomes a whole lot easier. Having a good chunk of energy shield on top of all the evasion rating will help your character survive the hits that don't get evaded, both before and after you take acrobatics. So yeah, that's the gist of the build. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to see all of the details so you can look at your own pace, then you can find a max roll link or a path of building link in the description and the pinned comment. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask me in the comments. If you found this build guide helpful, then don't forget to like and subscribe for more like it. Lastly, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.